Welcome everyone. I know it's been a long time since I did a podcast on my channel, and today's topic is gonna be about horror games. Here is what I'm gonna talk about in my podcast: how I got into horror games I grew up with, my favorite horror games, what makes horror games frightening and great, and finally upcoming horror games that I'm excited to play. When I got into horror video games, it all started when I was only around 5 and 6 years old. This was like more specifically around the late 90s, and thanks to my uncles, they are the one who introduced me to horror games. This is where it all began, and then years later, when I was in middle school, I started to play more and more horror games. Not only on PlayStation but also on PC. Do you guys remember these old school Flash horror games? Yeah, I used to play these a lot back in the day. Now I'm gonna mention some of the scary games that I grew up with. It all started with these Resident Evil trilogies. A trilogy, I mean, Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, and Resident Evil 3, and then Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3. These are like the most memorable scary games that I grew up with. Like, I remember Silent Hill 1 gave me the creeps, and I was younger than 10 years old when I played Silent Hill 1, especially the opening scene. Oh my god, that gave me the creeps. And the same thing with the Resident Evil games. There are some scary moments. Don't worry, I wanted to spoil it for you because I'm pretty sure there are people who wants to play these games. So yeah, like, these games are really, really awesome horror games I grew up with. They are truly terrifying, and if you play this game, let me know in the comments. Now I'm gonna mention some of my all-time favorite horror games. I'm not gonna mention every single horror game that I enjoyed playing. I will mention just some of my most favorite, and these games are truly the best horror games I ever played, and I highly recommend them. And these games are Silver Chains. Was released, I think, in 2019. It's available on PS5 and Steam. Really awesome horror game, and if you love horror games where there are creepy dolls, this is the right game for you. It's really amazing. And the next two games are Stay Out of the House and Bloodwash. Both of them are from the same creator, Puppet Combo. Again, it's on PS5 and PC. And despite the fact that these two games have old school graphic, it doesn't mean that they are bad. They are truly terrifying. Trust me, if you want something that gives you the creeps, especially if you are into like retro style video games, I highly recommend these two games, and I actually streamed them on my channel. I will link the streams in the description box if you are curious to see the gameplay. Obscure 1 and Obscure 2: The Aftermath. These two originally are PS2 games, as you can see. But on 2021, I came across both of these games on Steam for really cheap price. So I thought to myself, since both of them are on Steam, why not play them? And I really, really enjoyed it. These two games are hidden gems, and I honestly enjoyed the second one the most. The next one is Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I know I already talked about this during the beginning of the video, but I just wanted to say this one, out of all of the Resident Evil trilogy on PlayStation 1, this one is my most favorite out of all of the three. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy 1 and 2, but to me, my most favorite out of all of them is Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And last but not least is Medicine. I actually came across this game like almost 2 years ago on PlayStation 5, and I'm so glad that I decided to play this game. Like, oh my god, this game is just intense and amazing. It's on Steam and PlayStation 5. My next point is I will talk about what makes any horror game frightening and amazing. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that these unpredictable jump scares, because if honestly, like, I feel like if you put so many jump scares in a horror game, it gets really boring, and I feel like majority of the jump scares in horror games are really predictable and they aren't scary they aren't scary at all. And to me, in my opinion, like, horror games, when they have the most unpredictable jump scares, the jump scares that happen at the most unexpected time, are 10 times scarier. And like, I'm gonna give you an example, like this cliche jump scare that happens after you either solve a puzzle or after you pick up a key item. I don't know about you guys, but to me, it feels as if this scare technique is so overused in horror games. Don't get me wrong, like, it's one thing when you use it a few times in games, but to me it feels like it's been so overused in horror games. So, like, me personally, I would rather play a horror game with a few like really scary, really terrifying jump scares than play a horror game with so many jump scares. Like, one, and and another thing is that when you put jump scare after jump scare after jump scare, like 3-4 jump scares in a row, at this point it gets boring and annoying rather than terrifying. Like, take an example from the video games that I mentioned previously, Bloodwash, all these horror games that I mentioned previously. These games are the reason why I thought they are the best horror games, because not only the jump scares are terrifying, but also the sound design is terrifying, which brings me to my next point, is the sound design. Not only, when I say sound design, I'm not only referring to the music that they use in horror games. I am also referring to sound effects. Doesn't necessarily have to be a jump scare type of sound effect, if that makes sense. Like, the sound design, my god, like, these games, the sound design these games is incredible, really incredible. It does give you the creep. The creep. Like, and another example is when you play a horror game, regardless of what type of horror game. Let's say you are exploring a haunted place, or you are exploring an abandoned area, and then you enter a room, and then out of nowhere you will hear a scary, mysterious sound, and this sound is mysterious and unknown, which makes it 10 times more terrifying, in my opinion. So you will start to you will start to feel paranoid and anxious, and you will start to think, oh, where the sound is coming from. You start to get paranoid, which brings me again to my next point, is what's the point if you are playing a horror game and it doesn't make you feel terrified, frightened, feeling the sense of dread? Because to me, I always tell this to myself and other people, if you play a scary game, any horror game, whether it is a retro game, modern horror game, regardless of that, if the game gives you the creeps, you feel anxious, and you feel like you are on edge of your seat, then this is a sign that you are playing a great horror game, because this is how horror games are supposed to be. Because what's the point if I am playing a scary game and it doesn't give me the creep, doesn't give me like a sense of dread, a sense of dread, or feeling frightened, feeling terrified and whatnot, because this is how horror games are supposed to make us feel in general. And one last thing I want to mention is that it's really hard to find horror games that are actually scary and amazing. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I swear to god, like, it feels like it takes really long time, and sometimes I will have hard time looking or finding a horror game that is actually amazing and terrifying. So can you guys like relate? Do you guys relate to that? I would love to know. And last but not least, I will be mentioning some upcoming horror games that I'm so excited to play. be crowned, I came across this game on YouTube and it really caught my attention. So I looked it up on Steam. The demo is available, and as a matter of fact, the demo is around 1 hour long. And this game is heavily inspired by Silent Hill, and and you all know that I love Silent Hill. So I'm definitely so excited to play the full game. Tormented Souls 2. I played the first one when it came out back in 2021. This game was also heavily inspired by not only Silent Hill but Resident Evil as well, with the fixed camera angles, music-wise, and the puzzles. So I was so happy when they announced the second one. However, they still haven't announced the exact release date yet. But nonetheless, this is definitely on my list. So excited to play it. And last but definitely not least, this game called Luto. This is an upcoming psychological horror game, and it will be available on both on PS5 and PC. When they released the demo for PS5, it was back around December 2023. But since I got my PC, I decided to get the game on Steam. And I honestly lost count on how many times I played the demo because I'm just so excited for this game. So yeah, like this game looks really amazing, and I have a feeling that it's gonna be a terrifying game. So thrilled to see how the full game is gonna be. Thank you all so much for listening to my podcast, and I apologize if I stuttered a lot and if I was mixing up so many words together, because to be honest, it's been a long time since I did a podcast on my channel, and lately it just so happened that I finally had the time and energy to do my podcast. And as a matter of fact, I was actually honestly worried that it's gonna take a really long time to finish it, but I'm so glad that I was able to finish it earlier than expected. And also, if you are a horror fan, please type in the comments section below what horror games you grew up playing, like what age you started getting into horror games, and your favorite horror games, or maybe like upcoming horror games that you are planning to play. And if you are not a horror fan, that's perfectly fine. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed listening to the podcast. And if you want to, please recommend some good horror games to me, because I love discovering new horror games. So if you have suggestions for really scary horror games, don't hesitate to put them down in the comments section. I love you all so much. Thank you all for the amazing support, and I will see you all later. I wish everyone an amazing week ahead. Mwah. Bye everyone.